When we think about extracting data from a contract, what we're really thinking about is either very commonly extracting clauses or entities from a document, or provisions if you prefer, and clauses and entities from a document. And when we do this, the historical way, back 30 years ago was to use rules or keywords to do this that would encode what is required to be returned. And this would very often be very large and very complex Boolean expressions that when you encountered a new document, things would have to change. You'd have to change or modify the rules you've applied because there were variations. Though now, more recently, due to all the advances in machine learning and the much more consistent and reliable performance of machine learning for these types of tasks, machine learning has become the de facto way to really do content extraction out of documents. When we think about this for clauses, what we really want to pull out of clauses is all the wide variations and non-standard aspects that can occur in a particular clause. And so if we think about something like a change of control clause, while yes, the very easy and simple case is that it mentions change of control, it has a header change of control, this doesn't always occur in actual documents. What happens is that someone might be referring to direct or indirect assignment, which can trigger a change of control. They might be talking about a merger or consolidation, which again can trigger a change of control. However, they might also be talking about change control, which deals with something completely different. And depending on how rules or other things might be set up, they might not be robust to this, they might hit on them, which we don't want to happen. Instead, with machine learning and through a relatively decent number of examples, we can encapsulate these variations and produce the results users are after, which is all things talking about change of control, and all the things that are not talking about change of control are left to the side. The other thing to keep in mind is that with machine learning, we also very typically have the benefit of dealing with low quality documents or errors in OCR or other just errors that might occur in the process that introduce non-desirable text, right? And so this might be the case that OCR recognizes a T as an F. If we're using a rule, that might not be able to pick up or determine the distinction between these two things and then not return the necessary clause. Whereas with machine learning, typically we would expect that it would succeed. Similarly, with entity extraction, it might not be uncommon to use rules or guidelines to produce the entities in a document. The very obvious example is that if you wanted to, say, get the party names out of a document, it's very easy to look at the preamble of a contract to try and identify the party names. Though this is not always the case because they might only then use defined terms because the parties were actually defined on a cover page or somewhere else in the document in, say, a definition section. And so you run into problems there. You might also do something very well suited for machine learning, but perhaps a little too naive, which is just pull out all party names in a document and then try and figure out which ones are correct after the fact. This can work, but again, requires a lot more fine-tuning and human involvement than, say, just producing a machine learning model that identifies which parties are which in, say, the beginning of a document. The other thing to keep in mind when you're doing all of this is how well any of these tasks are going to use on the documents you're going to encounter. And so it's always advisable to test on your own documents or the documents you think your clients are going to provide to you when you're dealing with these types of content extraction tasks, because no two models are made equal, and what you think of as change of control is almost certainly going to be slightly different than what someone else thinks of as change of control. We've done this study, we've seen that it's true. And so, as with all things, check it out, see what works, what doesn't work, and if possible, hope that they provide you some mechanism to either refine or train your own versions of these models to produce the content you want.